It's time for Hostel Discourse. Here's your host, David Rohlfing.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hostel Discourse. Tonight on episode 37, we're going to be reviewing Solo, a Star Wars story. Last week we talked about our expectations, had a few fun Star Wars related debate questions, and tonight we are going to be telling you how we liked the movie, if we're going to see it again, if not, and how it kind of lines up with the rest of the Star Wars franchise. So we're excited to get into that, and we're going to wrap things up with some Star Wars trivia questions to settle the score between me and Tim from last episode. But first, before we get started, let me introduce you to tonight's crew. Returning guest Mike Rohlfing from St. Louis. Hello.
That means thank you, have me.
Thank you, have me.
We will have you. And returning guest Tim Witham, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Sorry I can't speak Wookiee.
And joining him from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the usuals, Jared and Joe. Hello.
Hey, gang.
Hello, everybody.
Three in the same room. This is very rare for our recording format, but exciting. Now when we do trivia, you can physically harm each other if you lose.
That's exactly the joke I was going to make. Great minds, Big D, great minds.
Maybe rip somebody's arms off. Who knows?
Ooh. Joe definitely could. I'm too weak.
All right, let's start off with a high-level review. Let's stay away from spoilers. Those who haven't seen the movie can listen to this section and look at the show notes to see what time code that is for the spoiler section. But let's start with Mike. Since we didn't hear from you last week, I'd love to hear your initial thoughts from Solo.
So I listened to a very popular movie podcast, and one of the reviewers described his opinion on the Solo movie. He compared it to a cover band that he went and saw at a park, a cover band that played Beatles songs. It sounded exactly like the Beatles, but in between songs, they would kind of also do impersonations of the Beatles, and those impersonations were awful. So he really enjoyed the music, but there was still something about it that didn't quite. He wouldn't have paid the same price to see that cover band as he would the Beatles themselves. And I'll take that analogy a step a little bit in a different direction. I would compare this movie to every summer the St. Louis Symphony plays concerts. They'll do like the music of Queen or the music of Billy Joel, and they'll also have like an impersonator that sings along with the orchestra. But no matter who that singer is, they still have the frickin' St. Louis Symphony Orchestra behind them. And all that to say, I really did like this movie. Like, I liked it a lot and had a ton of fun with it. And even though some things were a little bit off, even though that the person singing the covers of those songs is like, oh, not quite exactly what you would expect, it still had the St. Louis Symphony behind it, if you know what I mean.
What an analogy. All right, let's move on. Joe, what did you think of the movie?
I went into this movie with very low hopes. I don't know. Going in, I was like, oh, it's just going to be another Disney movie that I didn't enjoy. And with the exception of like one or two parts that I'll get to later, like the movie really impressed me just through and through. And I'm starting to get into the movies like Rogue One and Han Solo that are just these like extra movies on the side more than I am the actual Star Wars story with 7, 8, and 9. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I was impressed by the movie for sure.
Awesome. Tim, what did you think?
So echoing Joe's sentiments, definitely had that same feeling where I realized as I was watching this, it was a movie I went in not expecting to like and even having some poor sentiments towards. But then I realized, wow, thinking about Rogue One, how much I enjoyed that, this being the second anthology film, this is something that I think really speaks to maybe the ideas of what we had of maybe a Star Wars TV series, which could be really great independent stories told over, maybe a smaller and more concise time span. That's what I really appreciate about these movies, that they can do very different stories and also, I think in ways bring a lot of fresh variety to characters that we might already be familiar with, but really put them in situations we've never seen them before. So I came in not expecting to like this movie and walked away pretty satisfied.
Great. Jared?
I like this movie a lot, and I probably liked it the most out of anybody here, although Mike sounded like he liked it a lot too. My fears about this movie were, as I said on the last episode, that Han and Lando would kind of suck, and like they wouldn't do them justice at all. And I get where you're coming from, Mike, about maybe they are a little off, and it's hard to recreate iconic characters like that. For me, I loved all the acting in this movie. I thought everybody was great. All the main people we follow, at least. And I thought this movie had just some great stuff. Like I thought if you take some of the cool things from like Guardians of the Galaxy and some of the cool things from like Pirates of the Caribbean, I got some of that in this movie, and I really liked it.
From Lone Ranger.
And Lone Ranger, yeah.
Pretending to know what that is.
Right.
Army Hammer, Johnny Depp.
Okay.
Come on.
I can picture the trailer. I can picture the Lone Ranger trailer. And that's actually 2 movies now we've referenced with Johnny Depp that we see similarities with. But I've never seen Lone Ranger, so I'll take your word for it. But yeah, I liked it a lot. And I dare say, I liked it better than Rogue One, which in the list of all Star Wars movies so far, that puts it like 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Jared. I really enjoyed this movie, so I think I'm probably maybe on a equal level with you. You guys heard my expectations last week. They were kind of low. We had a lot of apprehensions about just choosing a Han Solo origin story in general, and Alden Ehrenreich really put on a good performance. He didn't try to replicate Harrison Ford, but he kind of put his own spin on it, and he was playing Harrison Ford at a different time in his life, so that kind of shone through too, that he didn't have to be exactly the same. He could kind of put his own flavor on it. So I really liked his performance, and Donald Glover also I think he pretty much nailed the role. He really got the whole... we didn't see Lando that much in episode 5 and 6, but the brief time that we spent with Lando in those movies, we kind of got that feeling that he's kind of like a sleazy, can be a good friend, but can also kind of is out there for himself. And Lando really put on that nice, like selfish kind of personality, but still likable. So he did a really good job there. I did kind of want us to touch upon, before we get into some details, the kind of like box office drama that's going on right now, and kind of talk about why we think that it's not doing as well as it should be, or as well as it was expected to be. The budget was $250 million for this movie. Opening weekend, it made $103 million in North America and $68 million overseas. The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens made almost $1 billion each, I'm pretty sure. And I think Rogue One was up there too. And this movie is like barely going to eke past the profit zone. So I'd love to hear what you guys kind of think. Like, why does this past weekend not perform well for Star Wars? Is it because of Deadpool, or are there other reasons that come to mind?
Well, don't get me wrong in the sense that I've always thought this movie was a terrible idea. No one when they were like, hey, we're going to make extra spin-off movies, said, all right, let's recast Han Solo and make a young Han Solo movie. Like no one really wanted that. Now I think they did a really good job at it. And I actually kind of want a sequel to it, after seeing this new one. But there was so much like bad news about it ahead of time, and already so many people assuming so many things ahead of time, like our friend Kanan, who has sworn off this movie before he even saw a trailer for it.
Star Wars.
And our other friend Jacob.
I hope, for the sake of the future of movies like these in the Star Wars universe, that word of mouth does catch on, because it has really good reviews. It has generally positive reviews. It has even better, cinema score, a compilation of audience reviews. Has like an A- or something like that, which is really good. I hope that maybe as it remains in theaters, people will kind of jump to it a little more slowly than they may have for the previous movies. They may have wanted to see Deadpool last weekend, but they're saving Han Solo for this weekend. That's my hope, because I really did enjoy it. But I think so many people assumed so much and were just pissed off with the concept of it, that's what hurt it ultimately.
So one thing I'll add to this is there's really 2 possibilities. as to why it might not be doing so well. One is that the general audience goer who has no awareness of the drama that's been going from a production standpoint behind the scenes, they maybe were not satisfied with what The Last Jedi was. I personally like that film a lot, but I think that could definitely maybe color in a sour perspective them wanting to see another Star Wars movie, regardless of where it fits into the timeline, this, that, and the other. Second possibility is that it's simply franchise fatigue. Maybe people don't like that there's a Star Wars movie coming out every year now. It's kind of strange for me to say that, thinking that I go see every Marvel movie that comes out each year, and I'm very much engaged with each new one that's coming out. Now we're, getting 2 in one summer, with Ant-Man and the Wasp and Infinity War. And I think what I'm realizing is that so far with Star Wars, Disney has not diversified the catalog of these movies yet to make them very different. Because I think that's what has allowed Marvel to have a lot of staying power and accessibility, is that it's all very different. Guardians of the Galaxy has such a different flavor and feel than, say, something like Black Panther. So I think maybe once Disney gets confident that, okay, these anthology films are being critically received very well, maybe we can start to become much more diverse in each of these. And that will lead to better profits later on.
Well, yeah, and to Tim's point, Star Wars has always been a very special thing. We waited many years for the prequels. We waited many years for Episode 7, and then a couple of years for 8. But yeah, cramming 2 into less than 5 months. We've never had that before. There's never been anything to judge what that would even do or how people would take that on. As a casual Marvel fan, I do not see all the Marvel movies in the theaters. I've seen them all in some capacity, but I'm not always jumping out to go see Ant-Man just because I don't know much about him. I don't really care, And so if you take that from the perspective of a casual Star Wars fan, that's probably what's happening here. They may see it in a couple weeks. They may get it on, Redbox or on demand, but they're not jumping to see it on Thursday night at 7:00 like I am.
Yeah. And some interesting things. IMDb gave it a 7.2. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 71%. And its critic consensus from Rotten Tomatoes is a flawed yet fun and fast-paced space adventure. Solo should satisfy newcomers to the saga as well as longtime fans who check their expectations at the theater door. Which, that's weird, because I understand that we're 4 people, and that's probably not representative in any way of the greater audience, but I thought we all had, good reasons to have low expectations, and then they were surpassed. So I definitely disagree with this Rotten Tomatoes thing saying, check your expectations at the door and you'll be okay. It's after Episode 7 and Episode 8, I feel like expectations are just pretty low for Star Wars. And maybe that's why we like it so much, is because it exceeded our low expectations.
Yeah, I'm just worried that Lucasfilm or Disney is going to go off of the gross and what money this movie made rather than the positive reviews and feedback. And I really do hope that in these next few weeks that number goes up, because I want more of these spin-offs. They've been great. Rogue One and this movie have been really, really good. So I'm just worried there that they're going to be basing their future decisions just off the dollars and not the reception that I think most Star Wars fans are having for this movie, which is positive.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way the business works. If anything, I'm pretty sure this Han Solo movie is the most expensive Star Wars movie ever made, which that's just stupid. That should not be the case. They can make an Ant-Man and they'll be just fine. This could have been an Ant-Man as far as budget goes. And I loved Ant-Man. I didn't see it in the theater, but I really liked it when I watched it at home. If they can figure out a way to lower the budgets on these, they don't have to be so grandiose, and they can still be very good. Which is actually kind of what Solo is. It's just they spend a lot of money on it. We'll get to plot points later. But yeah, if they can figure out a way to not spend so much money on these things, they will make money. And that's as easy as that.
Yeah. We've mentioned some of the production issues. For the casual fan who doesn't know what we're talking about, I wanted to go into detail a tiny bit on that real quick. So basically, this movie, George Lucas actually started developing it in 2012 when he sold Star Wars to Disney. What year was that? 2015? Something like that? I don't know. They brought Lawrence Kasdan on to help write the screenplay, and he was joined by his son, Jonathan Kasdan. They started shooting January 2017. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were directing it. And then June 2017, they basically got fired over, in quotes, creative differences with Lucasfilm. And then Howard took over the directing after that. So he reshot like 70% of the movie, which is why that budget is so ridiculously high. So that's kind of what that production drama or the issues were. And for how many issues there were in production and the reshoots, it really felt like a coherent film to me, even more than Rogue One did. And they also had a bunch of production issues, and that movie feels a little bit more pieced together than even this movie does. So he really pulled it together and put together a good movie, in my opinion, overcoming those issues.
Yeah, I'm super curious what remained from the original version. I'm sure things will get out eventually from the actors or from maybe some behind the scenes features, deleted scenes. I do know that what's the character's name? Dryden, the Paul Bettany, the bad guy, Scarface. Mm-hmm. He was originally played by a completely different actor. Oh. And that guy could not return because of his others scheduling, conflicts, and they had to completely replace him with Paul Bettany. The original guy, I think his name's Michael something. He was in The Wire. Oh. And his character apparently was a like human lion hybrid or something weird, like some CG makeup, some sort of funky animal human character that was completely removed and replaced by Scarface.
Interesting.
The Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I don't think he said this, are the guys behind the Lego Movie. They're the guys behind 21 Jump Street, the guys behind Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. All very interesting movies, funny movies that sound bad on paper but are actually pretty darn good. So that was sort of the optimism behind them taking on another movie that sounds terrible on paper, but they could potentially do something with. And then they were eventually removed and replaced. So we can only speculate what still remains from their version, but it is definitely an interesting thing to ponder.
For sure. All right, let's talk about the movie in detail. So this will be your spoiler alert, people who haven't seen it. I'll put the time code for when we start trivia in the show notes if you want to skip ahead. We won't have any spoilers there. Okay, last episode, I asked you what your most anticipated performances were. Joe, you said Emilia Clarke, I believe. Tim, who'd you say?
Woody Harrelson.
Jared, who'd you say?
Woody.
Okay, and I said the Chewbacca actor. I forget the Swedish name. Jonas.
Jonas. Yes. And I in the chat said Paul Bettany.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let's start with Joe. What did you think of Emilia Clarke in this movie?
I thought she did a fine job. Very attractive. But the thing that I liked most was that her role, like I kind of thought, oh, it's going to be like a love story and all about how Han like falls for this girl or whatever. And I was really glad that like literally in the opening segment, they make out or whatever. And it's like, all right, they're already an item. We don't need to like make this the focal point of the story, which was pretty big for me. Cause I didn't want a big like Han Solo love story. I wanted to see more about like how he became a scoundrel and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like the movie did that. And it kind of had her as like the side part in that. And then obviously her role at the end, we don't know where that's going to go. But the fact that like she's still alive, I figured she would have been dead. So that's kind of interesting. So yeah, she kept me intrigued the whole time. And that's what I wanted.
Did anybody else get kind of a weird vibe? I know it was supposed to be a little bit weird when they met after those 3 years, but I felt like something was a little off there. I don't know if it was just their chemistry as like far as a couple goes, acting it was, but what'd you think?
That was honestly one of my favorite scenes, especially the second time, because I kind of knew what was up, because I think it was supposed to be weird. And like, because she's been through a whole lot of crap that we don't know about, and I think it was supposed to be kind of awkward and strange. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but it just, because it felt really strange, I appreciated it, because I thought, man, they made this feel really awkward, and it should be really awkward because there's a lot of stuff that's happened between, these two people in the last few years.
I'll say I think art is a lot better when you assume that everything is intentional. So I'm on board with that, Mike.
I thought it all felt very odd, and I thought it was odd enough that it was intentional, and I thought it worked, if that makes sense.
Well, even with the visual cue for that scene, that's also the first time, I think, about a minute after they start talking, we see the camera zoom in on her brand. Yes? Mm-hmm. Her mark. So I think that's kind of what should tip off the audience watching it. It's like, oh, I've seen the symbol on the big bad. It's on her. That's why it's kind of awkward, because she's definitely kind of in ownership almost of him now.
Well, not of him.
Yeah. I mean, her character, Kira, she was obviously very apprehensive because she knows that she's in this gang life and she can't, be with him anymore. But after 3 years, where the whole time that they're apart, Han is the goal is to get back with her, to get the ship, and to live happily ever after. I felt like he should have been a little bit more excited to see her than it seemed he was.
I agree.
I think maybe that was the half of it that was a little bit off for me.
He was also immediately prior instructed to keep his eyes down and not talk to anyone. So, I don't know.
Yeah, but he don't follow orders.
All right. Next actor, Woody Harrelson. Tim, what do you think?
So the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm realizing that, I'm sorry, is it Aiden or Alden?
Alden Ehrenreich.
Alden Ehrenreich. He is doing a great job kind of encapsulating the mannerisms, specifically the physical ones of Han, kind of giving a weird half smirk, stuff like that. But the whole time he's playing it pretty upbeat, pretty happy. And I'm like, well, how do we get to the Han we see in the cantina in episode 4? And so all of a sudden the prism for that change is definitely Woody Harrelson's character instructing Han to be hardened, and to always distrust those around you, especially those who are trying to be your friend. And I think kind of the double whammy at the end, which we can maybe talk about a bit later, is really what allowed Han to become a little bit more callous. And so that's why I liked Woody Harrelson's acting so much. Woody's always great, but he really was a key character to give Han a real development from kind of maybe a slightly happier, more carefree individual to someone who's a little more cold and calculating. So yeah, I was a big fan of Woody's acting.
Not even a double whammy, it's a triple whammy, because he gets betrayed 3 times at the end by Lando and Khaleesi and, Woody Harrelson's character.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
If that doesn't callous you, I don't know what would.
What'd you think of the scene where his partner or wife just died and the monkey guy, and he's kneeling at their graves? Did you think he was sad enough in that point of the movie?
He's callous, baby.
Yeah. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, pointing out the worst part in my mind of each character's performance. But
let me tack on to Woody Harrelson here. I also really liked how he was written, and I liked how, like Tim was saying, definitely you can clearly see how bits of Woody Harrelson's character became, bits of Han Solo. And I thought that was really cool. Another reason I like this movie so much is because the type of character that's in this movie, just the sleazeball that is not loyal to anybody except himself, is a really fun character to watch. And Woody Harrelson is he's the probably the sleaziest of all. He's the sleaziest sleazeball. He's truly loyal to no one. And so, for example, when he died, it's he has no enemies. His only enemies are temporary, and he's only trying to serve himself in the moment, right? So he's about to kill Han, and Han pulls first, Han draws first, as Joe points out.
Watch out first.
And kills him, and he's not mad. Han's not his enemy. He just says good move, kid. I love that. I think it's really cool. That kind of character is a lot of fun to watch, and this movie is nothing but those characters.
I was mad that he died because I wanted to see him and Han hang out with Jabba for a little bit.
Lando's character is very similar as far as selfishness, sleazeball. I mean, he cheats and he ran away at the end. He didn't help them out. So maybe in the next movie, if there's a Solo sequel, Lando might kind of fill that role as far as a partner for Han and his mischief. Who knows? Mike, let's move on to you. Paul Bettany, what do you think of his character and performance?
I think I actually wrote Paul Bettany and Jon Favreau in
yes.
in the chat. Again, like I said before, Paul Bettany came into this movie very late, and I feel like he did a really good job. He's very intimidating. He the CG work they did on his face was really interesting. He wasn't like that super memorable of a villain. I'm not going to buy his action figure, but I think he did the job just fine. The fight at the end was interesting. I really liked how instead of like some universe altering climax, it was literally just a fight in a bad guy's office.
Yeah. And not even
kind of refreshing.
The highest bad guy. He's mid-level.
Right. I mean, that fight was kind of dumb because I feel like Han could have just run to the door and shot him. You know, find a corner and hide, and then as he lunges at him with those laser knives, he could just shoot him. But
I was just thinking, distance management, Han. Come on, it's not that hard.
Yeah, right. Aside from that, I think he was good. He was good. He's not Kylo Ren good. He's not Palpatine good, but he's a decent bad guy.
Yeah,
I think he's on par with Krennic from Rogue One.
Good comparison.
And better than Snoke.
Jon Favreau, who does the voice of Rio, is that the monkey guy's name?
Yes.
Oh, that's who that was.
I really liked that character. I thought he was really fun. Just the right amount of humor and sarcasm. I wish that character would have lasted longer as well, just because he was unique and interesting and funny and some good comic relief near the beginning of the movie. So I say thumbs up to Jon Favreau.
Yeah, he was hilarious. I can't remember his lines off the top of my head, but there are a couple ones where I laughed out loud.
It's like, you'll never take a better nap than in the lap of a Wookiee.
Yeah, that was good.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, his character was really funny, and I thought L3 was probably the funniest character.
Yes.
It's like she had some great lines. Like when she frees the droid. Oh, I thought of the other one too. So the first one is, well, I don't know what order, but she frees the droid, and the droid says something in droid talk, and she's like, I don't know, go free your brothers and sisters or something. Just get out of my way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then the other thing is like, she's flying the plane, and Lando has to go somewhere. He's like, you need anything? She's like, equal rights.
Yeah, that was a funny line. I laughed at that one.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
Also, just such a cool droid design. I think that's like the best droid design I've seen since IG-88. Like, just really, really cool. The top of her head kind of reminded me of Alpha from Power Rangers Mighty Morphin. But,
yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yeah. And then, Rio had a cool design too. I thought, that just shows how far CGI's come to make believable characters.
Yeah. My most anticipated performance was Yunas Watamo as Chewbacca. And I feel like it definitely was one of the highlights of the movie, at least for me. I really liked their introduction. When they threw him in the pit, I had no clue that was going to be, a Wookiee, especially Chewbacca. I thought it was going to be a Rancor or something. Like the initial sound they had kind of sounded Rancor-ish, so it kind of threw me off. And then Han speaking Wookiee, whatever their language is called, was pretty funny and clever, I thought. And then I don't know. I guess they didn't really go into, I think in the original trilogy, they say that Chewie owes him some kind of life debt, but they didn't go into any detail on that. I guess you can just assume that it's from letting him out of the cage or saving him, I guess, from hitting the rock on the train or whatever. But yeah, I thought he was a nice part of the movie, and it really kind of established their good friendship because, I mean, Chewie's been around for a while, but Han really, I don't know. It was a friend when he needed it, in a hard time where he's losing his girl and, everything they went through. But I liked Chewie. What do you guys think of Yunas?
Chewie was really good. I don't know, David, you bring up an old memory of mine. Wasn't Han as a kid supposed to originally be in episode 3 on Kashyyyk? Wasn't he raised by Wookiees in the Legends or no?
That would have been terrible.
Maybe.
Oh, it would have been bad. Definitely.
I don't know.
It was already bad.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, Chewbacca was great. Yeah, I guess I'm a little curious still how Han picked up the Wookiee language before this meeting. But yeah, definitely good to see them together. I really liked the scene, as kind of fan servicey as it was, to see Chewie getting pissed off at the holographic chess. But yeah, I don't know. Like, Chewie's consistent throughout the movies, and I think it's really helpful that you can recast him, but thankfully have a kind of a mask to keep him looking similar. So yeah, he was great, man. I loved his bits with Han. It was very much like their old banter would have been.
I don't know if you guys noticed, I did see it twice, so this helps. But when Han is speaking Wookiee, the subtitles are in very much in broken English.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yep.
Which cracked me up. I love that they never subtitled Chewbacca, and I hope they never do.
Yes.
But the fact that they did subtitle Han, I thought was kind of clever and made me laugh. And the fact that he wasn't even speaking it clearly made it even better.
Yep.
I think the best kind of fan service is fan service that is good on its own, right? And I think that's a funny scene, whether you have any idea about the original hologram or not. And same with him tearing his arms off. That's kind of funny, even if you don't know that they talk about him tearing his arms off, beforehand. So I thought they did a good job with there was definitely some fan service with the dice and the blaster, but I loved all of it. It was they were all cool shots on their own, or funny on their own, or stuff like that.
I've got a good feeling about this.
Yeah.
I will say, no matter what they do, those dice will never mean anything to me. It is so odd that they've made that a thing.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, dude. They really
starting
fixated
with
on
the
it.
Force Awakens.
Did any of you ever notice those in the original 3 movies? They're apparently in Empire or whatever.
Not until 8.
No, they're in 4, I think. I don't know even if they show up in Empire again.
Okay.
I remember they even made a point of those die when they were doing the production interviews leading up to Episode 7's release. I remember J.J. Abrams specifically has a production shot of Rey, Harrison Ford, and maybe Finn Boyega in the cockpit of the Falcon with the die very, very distinctly silhouetted in the foreground. So it's I just don't get what they're trying to go with it. Maybe because Han is such a character that's a bit of a gambler. He rolls the dice a lot, but it's
sure,
they're trying to make.
I mean, I get it, but it's just not. It just feels very forced.
It does. No, I'm with you, man.
It is the last shot of this Solo movie.
And pretty much the first, right? Because he puts it on the mirror of the suiter he's in.
If he used those dice to win the Falcon, would it have given them some more meaning?
Absolutely.
Maybe.
If he had super fuel in there, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Make him, a little weighted. Yeah.
But I will say, for as many references as they did have throughout this movie, I didn't think they went too overboard, at least as much as they could have. There's the scene where Han and Chewie are standing on that lower platform on the ship, and Han's like, "Your name's Chewbacca? I need to give you a nickname." At least he didn't say, "I'm going to call you Chewie."
Yeah.
It at least came somewhat organically. I'm trying to think of some other examples. Chewie rips the guy's arms off, but he just does that for good reason. It's not like Han's like, "Oh, I heard Wookiees rip people's arms off."
Yeah. Yeah.
And Han shoots first, but he doesn't mention "yo, you got to shoot first" or anything.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I was honestly surprised, but happy that they didn't go the Jabba the Hutt route. I know he's kind of mentioned in passing, which I think would be a great sequel to Solo. But that's sort of the story we all know. But they decided to go a different route, which was refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, they did mention the Hutt cartel at the very beginning in dialogue. But yeah, I was honestly expecting Jabba to pop up, but maybe we want to talk about the elephant in the room?
Boba Fett.
No, Joe, you idiot.
Obi-Wan.
I did want to say that.
Yes, Obi-Wan. Yes, that's the one.
That's the
elephant in the room.
You talking about the red guy with horns in the room?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about the twist. Or one of the twists, I guess. The other twist I was not that big of a fan of, the Enfys Nest little girl warrior twist.
That's the one part of the movie that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Darth Maul twist. Tim, have you watched Rebels?
I watched the Twin Sons fight scene, so I know what happens to Maul.
Yeah.
But that's this is 10 years before Episode 4, and I don't know when Twin Sons is.
Did the rest of you know that Darth Maul, spoiler for Rebels, evacuate now if you don't want to hear. Did you know that Darth Maul gets killed by Obi-Wan at the end of Rebels?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, again?
Yeah.
Man, he has his number. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I didn't realize he died a second time. I thought it was just the...
Well,
he was in Clone Wars. In my opinion, I actually was more of a fan of his brother that they brought in, but I ended up liking where the character went, and I thought there was enough of a reason to bring him back that it was cooler than just having him. Because let's face it, guys, like if we were to redirect or remake entirely the first trilogy, I would want there to be a bigger emphasis on Maul being the big bad, because he's so visually striking, and I think, you know, he's just so, how to say, quintessentially evil. I think it would actually end up being kind of engaging just because he's so stupidly evil and so savage. I don't know.
Tim, do you remember, have you ever seen the YouTube videos titled "What If the Prequels Were Actually Good"?
I think that's where I'm getting this idea, because they talk about bringing Maul in for longer, right?
Yeah, there's this YouTube series of this guy who rewrites the prequels one episode at a time. One video is an episode, and they're decently long videos. So he gets into okay detail, and he talks about making Obi-Wan the main character of the prequels and Darth Maul his primary antagonist after killing Qui-Gon.
Yep.
And like he doesn't quite defeat him after he kills Qui-Gon. He gets away and then he comes back, whatever. I think that would have been so awesome. I agree with you.
Yep.
And Mike, whenever you said Obi-Wan, it's like after the movie ended, Joe and I were talking because we saw it together, and my first thought was like, we got to have an Obi-Wan movie where Obi-Wan in the same time frame, like finally kills Darth Maul.
Yeah, I'm curious I would certainly love to have that as well. I'm curious if they would remake the cartoon, or because it's already happened in canon, would they just kind of push Rebels or whichever one it takes place in off to the side and say, like, this is the cartoon version, now we'll make the live action version, like Disney's been doing with every other thing that they own?
Yeah, exactly.
Or will it have to be some different story with Obi-Wan on Tatooine with baby Luke and fighting with Owen Lars and whatever? Like, either way, I've since the beginning of this Disney Star Wars saga, I've wanted an Obi-Wan movie, as has the rest of the Star Wars fan community. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they'll do with that. As far as like Maul being in the end of this movie, I thought it was a really fun twist. I was aware that he was still alive and that he had robot legs, so it didn't like completely... It surprised me, but it didn't confuse me. I was with two other people who had no idea what was going on. One guy was like, "Does this take place before Phantom Menace?" And I'm like, think about it. Han Solo is not that old. So I'm sure that confused a lot of people. Many people.
Well, that explains the poor box office performance, right?
Well, I hope not.
The twist.
Yeah.
My hope is that they would kind of recreate the Obi-Wan duel or killing of Maul in the Obi-Wan spinoff, if there's an Obi-Wan spinoff. But my feeling is that they're not going to make Rebels like uncanonical. They might recreate it like an exact replica of that final battle at the end of the Obi-Wan movie or something like that. But I don't know. I hope they would put the movies over Rebels and kind of change it up a little bit in the Obi-Wan spinoff. But I really don't think they'll actually do that. But they could make Maul. They just announced a Boba Fett spinoff like right before Solo came out, or maybe the day after or something. And Boba Fett's obviously involved with gangsters, and he works for them and works for the Empire, and whoever will pay him. But if Boba Fett worked with the Crimson, what are they called? Crimson Dawn, or worked with Darth Maul, that could also be a really good way to continue that story with Maul. But obviously they knew that it would confuse people who haven't seen the cartoons that Maul's still alive. So they definitely were taking a risk there, and they're for sure going to include him in some future movie, whether that's Obi-Wan or Boba Fett, because that was a risk they took there, and they're not going to do that for nothing.
Joe thought maybe episode 9.
Yeah, I didn't realize at the time that he dies in Rebels, though. Yeah. I thought maybe he would just survive until episode 9 and he'd come back in some way, but it would have been hard to fit that
He'd be real old.
Yeah.
He'd be red and gray.
Alien, you know? Wookiee's 190 years old or whatever.
Yeah, good point.
Let's talk about the other The other twist I mentioned, the Enfys Nest. I forget what her group is called. The group of other marauders that had that like more ethnic sounding song whenever they showed up in the train battle. What did you think of that reveal? And also, I guess, the end of the movie where they mention that Solo's giving them money and she's like, I'm going to start the rebellion. What did you think of that whole thing?
Side note, I thought the whole time they were saying infant's nest, like a baby infant.
Oh.
It took me till after seeing it twice, I still thought they were saying that.
So you knew it was going to be a teenager.
I guess. Until, this is still kind of an interesting name, Infant's Nest. It's weird. But until I actually saw it written down, I'm like, oh, and they're referring to actually a specific person and not the group. I was very confused. Anyway, I don't know. Shoehorning Han being responsible for funding the rebellion was a little forced, but I guess it didn't bother me that much.
Well, real quick, guys, it's not the rebellion. At least I never interpreted it as that.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of supposed to be assumed that they turn into that.
But the rebellion was already in existence, right?
No,
at this point?
No, I think this takes place right before Rebels starts.
Oh.
And I also think one of the people in her crew was one of the people that shows up in Saul Guerrera's cave in Rogue One.
Really?
It's the alien with the mask on his mouth.
I noticed him, but I just didn't think it was the same. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I just thought they were different. They're different members of the same species. Okay, that's cool. Huh.
So
nice.
It is indirectly funding the rebellion in some sense.
Okay.
I had a problem, by far the worst part of the movie is when she took her mask off and that happened. She was a cool looking villain, and it would have been so sick if they would have had a Western shootout.
Yeah.
Or something. And I thought that was easily the worst part of the movie. But, if that happened, then I have no problem with how things turned out. I just wish that villain would have been... I don't know. They went so Disney right there.
That's exactly right.
And they all, made up, whatever, became friends. I don't know.
She looked exactly like Maya Rudolph from SNL.
She did. It's true.
It's like her daughter.
I feel like that reveal was just to be striking and different. Ooh, it's a teenage girl all along. But there's really no reason for it to be a teenage girl, and it doesn't really make sense. It just didn't work for me.
The whole Marauder storyline just didn't matter at all in the grand scheme of things. They just showed up and help him at the end when they were trying to steal from him the whole time, just because they're against the Crimson Dawn. We already knew the Crimson Dawn was bad guys. What do we need them to explain it to us?
I think maybe more than anything, it showed that, I don't know. I think it was just another element. I will agree it is a weak element of the movie, but I will say it's another element that shows Han things aren't always as they seem initially, and maybe to be distrustful of people. Just because, I don't know, he's told to dislike these supposed bad guys immediately from the get-go by Woody Harrelson's character, and then over time he realizes they weren't anything to be afraid of. But yeah, it definitely was a very Disney and very weak part of the movie, but at least maybe it could be kind of explained away by looking at how Han's character changes throughout the movie.
Yeah, and Han's always been a guy with a rough exterior with a heart of gold. That's kind of his character.
Yeah, so I actually think definitely. There's that one line that Emilia Clarke says where that
was my favorite line.
That actually ended up being a really good line. That without
she's the good guy.
Yeah, exactly. Deep down, you're always the good guy. Because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That could have been so corny, but they got it at a good moment and it fit well.
Yeah, and it perfectly that moment perfectly encapsulated Han. Is he wants to be this. And he is super badass, but he wants to just be the badass rough around the edges guy, but he's the good guy. And he always he comes back to save the day, he helps his friends, he's actually loyal. So I thought that was great too.
Going back to the very beginning of the movie on what's the planet called? Corellia. Mm-hmm. And Lady Proxima, the big worm mob boss type creature. I loved this whole first 20 minutes of the movie. It really was visually stunning. It kind of reminded me of a, I don't know, Blade Runner, film noir type lighting in that city, which was really awesome. And I feel like a Boba Fett movie with that kind of vibe would be really cool in the underground. But the Lady Proxima character was just awesome because she was so different and a creature that we haven't seen yet in Star Wars. I thought that was really creative, and it was weird, it was like a weird worm creature, but
it looked very real too. I think that was a puppet. A very impressive puppet.
Yes.
I would not be surprised.
That was actually another ode to the old movies that wasn't overdone, I thought, when he did the thermal detonator. And it was like, oh, this is just redoing the old thing, but then he throws the rock, and it was just kind of
funny. You made a clicking noise with your mouth.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
I feel like she'd be a nice, weird, animatronic in Star Wars land somewhere.
Ooh, yeah.
That'd be cool.
I think one of the things I appreciated the most about this movie was how kind of real and down to earth a lot of it felt. There was so much. I know people always make fun of George Lucas, saying everything, or Rick McCallum saying everything's so dense. There's always that quote people quote of Rick McCallum.
Jar Jar is the key to everything.
Yeah, right. But on Corellia, when he's in that, it's not a train station, whatever, that spaceport, there's just so much happening. There's so many things happening in the background. There's families being torn apart by stormtroopers. He looks over to the side and there's this commercial playing on the wall for the military that has a major key version of the Imperial March playing in the background, which cracked me up. John Williams music is now in the Star Wars world for real. And even at the very beginning, when he and whatever the girl's name is, Kira, are kind of running through the tunnels, you see all these kids, and there's just a lot of world building that, especially the second time through, was very interesting to look at and kind of take in a little bit more. This whole criminal underworld of Corellia was very fascinating in just the few minutes we had of it. Same, not to jump too far ahead, but same goes for the planet of Kessel. It was like a Temple of Doom scene where all the slaves get released. It was very reminiscent of that.
Mike, that is such a good comparison.
They even had Chewie and the other Wookiees pushing the thing out the door. It reminded me of the mine cars and all the dirty slaves being freed. It was awesome. And then it almost, and I'm pretty sure there was not much CG in that either. That whole sequence was very, very real. Mm-hmm. Even outside, sort of where the Falcon was landed, where there's sort of these water streams, and that was all very much in camera and very impressive. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that was my favorite sequence of the movie.
Dude, that's a pretty awesome observation, because again, just assume everything's on purpose, and that probably was it probably was on purpose.
Yeah, probably.
But that's awesome. Ode to Harrison Ford.
But yeah, my ultimate point is this movie felt very real and grounded, and seemed like they filmed a lot of it in camera, a lot of sets, a lot of locations, and they've done that in all the other new ones too, but they all seemed much more CG heavy than this one did, and that's one of the things I appreciated.
Were those Wookiees on Kessel? They didn't have fur on their faces.
Well, dude, I figured they were just kind of malnourished, right?
It was weird.
And I think the one that was helping him was a woman, and maybe they look different. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And Chewie clearly was drawn to them. And his whole thing was trying to rescue his people and stuff. So I think yes. One thing that I was going to bring up was, one of my fears was, we know how these movies end. Han's not going to die, Chewie's not going to die, or whatever. And I was right about that. I mean, we knew they weren't going to die, but I was wrong about knowing how the movie was going to end. And I thought one of the great parts about this movie was that the conflict started so early. Not just the fun chase getaway conflict, but the two characters we're introduced to who seem to be in love and are talking about their plans, and we get 20 minutes of good characterization and introduction to them, are almost immediately ripped apart. And so off the bat, I thought the conflict was great. And the conflict and that tension is there the whole movie. And when they get back together, and then I found myself just thinking I was just guessing how it was going to end. So it was very much opposite of what I thought. It's we know how this all ends, whatever. I thought they had me guessing the whole time, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, Han and Chewie aren't going to survive, but there's a lot of other characters
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, some of them died too soon in my mind, but they got to get rid of them at some point, I suppose.
Did the origination of his last name like throw off any of you, or did you care, or did you think it was funny?
It was kind of dumb, but also it's a silly last name, so I guess it's whatever.
I liked it because it was like, it doesn't matter. And there were a lot of parts in this movie where it was just kind of like, this isn't really important. And I feel like sometimes Disney, like with the dice, just tries to focus so much on this one thing. And I was glad that they were like, yeah, is your last name now? It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like a comparison of if there was a different character they did that to, if it would be stupid.
Yeah.
And the only one I could think of was Luke. If they're like, we saw you run, up high, so we're going to call you a Skywalker. Like, I don't know. It was fine.
He mentions later that he knew who his dad was, so he knows his real last name, though, which is kind of weird.
Vader.
Oh, snap.
Jin. He's Han Jin.
Han Jin.
We mentioned a few of the jokes and how he enjoyed them, but like the comedy and the Force Awakens, but especially The Last Jedi, really fell flat on me. Just like stupid your mom jokes and just like very childish. I felt like the humor in this movie was just on a different level that I actually thought was funny. And I don't know if it was more like adult focused or what, but I thought the comedy really worked in this movie much more than the episode 7 and 8 at least.
Yeah, I said earlier that it gave me Guardians of the Galaxy, flashbacks. And I thought Guardians was hilarious. And it goes back to just like this type of character. And like Peter Quill, Star-Lord, is this same type of character at some level. Just like the, kind of the cowboy who has great banter. So I thought they nailed the kind of the lighthearted humor aspect of this movie for sure.
I'm curious how your guys' audiences were.
Quiet.
Yeah, same. Surprisingly so, even during jokes.
Yeah, I went on, opening night, 7 o'clock to one of the best theaters in town, and there was barely a peep, even when it started. Which I'm not one to hoot and holler in theaters, but I kind of enjoy that on big opening nights, where the logo comes up and people cheer, or something exciting happens and people cheer. And there was next to none of that in my screening, which I thought was kind of interesting. The biggest laughs came from when the alien ate his cards or ate his fingernails or whatever at the poker table.
That was funny.
Which was pretty funny. And then when they inject the coaxium into the Millennium Falcon, but then it stalls out for a second, that got a big laugh.
That got a big laugh?
Yeah. Before it then, shoots out into the...
Right. That got... I don't think that got a single laugh.
It was just kind
Definitely
of
not.
quiet.
But other than that, I agree with you, David, that I think most of it hits pretty well. But I was just kind of surprised at the dullness of my crowd. But it seems like that was kind of your guys' experience as well. I will say I got super lucky when I went and saw The Last Jedi. They hit the wrong button and played 20 minutes of extra commercials at the start of the movie. I had to go out and tell them that they hit the wrong button, and they had to then fix it. And the movie ended up starting 40 minutes late. Wow. Somehow at Solo, they hit the wrong button again, and it started playing the movie immediately. No previews, no commercials.
Sweet.
It was amazing.
They were making up for it.
It was a different theater, but it was owned by the same people. Different theater, but owned by the same people. And
wow.
I was glad I showed up on time, because typically with reserved seats now, I show up 10 minutes late. Fortunately, I was in my seat about 10 minutes early because I had no trailers, and it was amazing.
That company needs to figure their buttons out.
All that said, I agree with you, David, about the humor, but I was underwhelmed by my audience performance.
I thought that the robot, I forget her name, she was definitely where they loaded on a lot of the comedy. Similar with Rogue One, they put it on K2SO, but I don't know. I feel like they should get a little more creative with that and not just have the droid be the comedy relief. But I guess they've kind of done that since the original trilogy with C-3PO and R2. I don't know. I just feel like they could have been a little more creative.
They had the Rio monkey character in there for a little bit.
Then he died.
He was good.
Yeah, they died. But like Han, I thought Han really was funny. Like, he just had some great lines too. Like, what should we drink to? Well, let's drink to and see where it goes. That's a great line, and that got some laughs in our theater. At least Joe was cracking up next to me.
Because then Chewie just puts it down.
Double fisted. Yeah.
There was also near the end where, you know, they're being confronted by the Marauders, and he says, "See that ship down there? There's 30 people in there about to pop out and come attack you guys." And then Lando takes off and flies away.
Yeah, that's great.
That was kind of funny.
Any other scenes or things from the movie you want to bring up?
I'm kind of curious. Like, there's so many set pieces in this movie. It felt very nonstop to me, which was great. Like, it did not feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it was. I'm curious, like, what your guys' favorite sequence was out of the number of options that they presented to us.
That's pretty easy for me. I remember watching, I don't know, I love action movies to a fault and will overanalyze set pieces just because, like, wow. You know, I keep thinking of how incredible it is that Tom Cruise keeps doing his own sequences within the Mission Impossible movies. Like, he does all those stunts and it's pretty nuts. But speaking of that, like, the action sequence that blew me away in terms of, like, only Star Wars could do this because it's a little more imaginative and you have a lot going on with spaceships and, you know, advanced technology, this, that, and the other, would definitely be the initial heist sequence of the coaxium, or the attempt off of the train. Just because, like, wow, what a classic and quintessential Western cowboy style heist, updated and put through this incredible filter of Star Wars. Like, it was just great to see a ship and several other, you know, enemy speeder bikes coming in, blasters, and just, you know, a full 3-dimensional fight scene that was really quite cool.
I agree. I love that sequence. The people have been kind of giving it some crap because they're like, why would the Empire transport that stuff in a train when they have ships that can fly in the light speed? But I don't care.
Yeah, who cares, man? Who cares?
I'm a sucker for the asteroid song that they reprised. I really liked that scene, and when Beckett or Woody Harrelson was in the cannons on the bottom of the Millennium Falcon, and I don't know, anything with the Falcon and a space battle is pretty awesome just because the ship itself is cool, but that was probably one of my favorite scenes.
I do think they went a step too far in that sequence. It's like, all right, we're going to fly the Falcon through this cloud that no one's ever flown through. Great. All right. But wait, there's a giant space monster bigger than anything we've ever seen before. Oh, but wait, there's now a giant black hole sucking everything into it. Yeah. Oh, but wait, we have to get through this collapsing cave before we get sucked into the black hole. Like, I don't know. That was a little bit too over the top for me.
I agree.
I will agree with you, David, about the music, and I'll bring this up real quick in case there's not another opportunity, and because you guys failed to mention it in the previous episode, that I have always thought, as a big movie music fan, that John Powell would be the perfect successor to John Williams. I've been a big fan of John Powell for a while. His most acclaimed score was How to Train Your Dragon, which if you have not listened to or seen it in a while, it is a great movie and an amazing score. And when I first heard that he was going to be scoring Solo, I was beyond thrilled. And honestly, that was my most anticipated thing. And I think he pulled it off to a T. And I've already listened to the score a couple times, and it is a perfect combination of classic John Williams and classic John Powell. He has a lot of things that make his music recognizable, and he did a great job at weaving those in along with the things that we recognize most. And yes, bringing in the asteroid belt music was fantastic, and bringing in the Millennium Falcon sort of theme song was awesome as well. So I did appreciate that aspect of that scene.
Great. Well, I think we should wrap up the review. I want to go around and ask you, should we do a rating or should we just slot it in as far as which Star Wars movie, is better? What do you want to do?
I think ranking that movie would be very difficult on the fly, but we can try it.
You can at least just do like your top 5 or something. You don't have to pick all the bottom ones. All right, I'll start. A New Hope, Empire, The Force Awakens, Solo, Rogue One, Wait, I forgot Revenge of the Sith in there. Oh, whatever. You get the idea. It's up there.
Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith. I don't know. It's probably tied with Solo and Force Awakens. I don't know. It's hard to pick. They're so different. Joe?
I would put it, man, I don't know. For me, it's kind of like the old trilogy and Revenge of the Sith, and then probably like Rogue One and then Han Solo. I really like Rogue One, and I might put it slightly above Han Solo.
Cool. Jared?
5, 6, 3, 4, Han. 5, 6, 3, 4, Han.
You put four behind three. That's blasphemy.
Maybe you're right, but here's the thing about 3. There is no Star Wars movie that holds the emotional weight 3 holds. Like Luke yelling, "No!" That's not it. Obi-Wan being crushed. That basically his brother or like his son, like his family member is whatever. You get the picture.
Killed younglings.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, what's yours?
I don't know. It's going to be pretty similar to what these people are saying. 5, 4, 7, 6. And then for me, I think the only real question is this better than Rogue One? That's tough. You know what? Yeah, I would rather rewatch this right now than Rogue One, so this is above Rogue One for me.
Cool. Mike?
It's really hard to rank my children.
You only have one in real life.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, I don't know.
As Mike's wife popped her head in right after he said that.
I didn't see her. I hear her in the background. Here's the deal. I could probably count on 2 hands the number of times I've seen Empire Strikes Back. That is not up there for me, and that's my fault. I know that it's a good movie, but it just doesn't live in my mind as much as some of the other ones do. So it's hard to, like, in my head, 4 is number 1 by a long shot. You know, I think Jedi's up there. Empire is up there just because it's part of those 3. You're going to laugh, but episode 1 is my favorite of the prequels.
Yes, I laugh.
For a whole number of reasons, nostalgia being the top one of those. But
In big doo-doo this time.
yeah, I mean, I can ignore Jar Jar, Anakin, and Boss Nass, and proclaim my love for the pod race and for the
Trade Federation.
You know,
Yes.
the last 20 minutes and the first 10 minutes, and there's some great stuff in that movie. Anyway, I digress. I think Solo is definitely up there, and Rogue One are up there. I should say, to finish this rambling, Solo and Rogue One are definitely above 7 and 8 for me.
Cool.
As Tim stares at me for saying and expressing my love of the Phantom Menace.
It's okay. I agree with you, dude. The pod racing scene, it's great. I wish pod racing would come back.
They did a little.
I thought in episode 8
stuff.
when they're on Canto Bight and you start hearing rumblings of something that was going to be a pod race and not those
that'd
stupid,
been so cool.
not those stupid
Yeah.
bunny horses.
Free the bunny
They
horses.
couldn't do something cool. All right, I'm sure we'll talk about Solo in future episodes because Star Wars is going to go on forever. But let's move on to the trivia questions you have prepared for us, Mike. And let's first do just me and Tim because we need to settle our score.
Okay, how's this working?
It's just first person to shout out the answer.
You're not gonna like yell ding or something, or
I want
raise
to do
your hand?
buzz.
Okay. So you have to say the word buzz and then I call on you.
Yeah, or let's like make a lightsaber activation sound like.
Sure, Tim.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and we're doing first to get 3 correct. Is that what we're doing? Okay. So these are all from A New Hope, and they are all the answers are numbers or have numbers in them. Okay. Ooh. So hopefully these aren't too hard. We'll see. If not, I can dumb them down. All right. Question number 1. After negotiations, how much money did Obi-Wan offer to Han in the cantina in A New Hope?
Yeah,
what was the final number?
Don't know.
Really?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
All
I just don't know the number.
We'll give you...
Wait, do we get a guess?
Jared,
Yeah, why don't Jared and Joe get the guess?
Jared had a guess. Yeah.
I think it's like
He goes,
I think it's like
we'll give
10,000
you
or 12,000,
2,000
15,000, 12,000.
Then 15 when we reach Alderaan. So 17. Yeah, no, nothing. All right,
ballpark.
I got another one from the same scene. What docking bay is the Millennium Falcon parked in on Tatooine in Mos Eisley?
Wow.
It gets brought up in Solo as well, doesn't it? I'm gonna guess 12.
No.
8.
David. No. Docking bay 94. They say it like 3 times.
Oh.
All right, well, I may have to change these questions. I'll try 1 or 2 more. What is the cell number that Princess Leia is held in? Yes.
Is it 1138?
No.
Oh my gosh. I know this, I just don't know it right now.
So, Tim, you were somewhat correct, but not. Chewbacca is being transferred from cell block 1138. But Princess Leia is in cell 2187.
Ah, okay.
Okay. All right. I got one more, and then I'll change the topic. Okay. Well, this one can be process of elimination. So when they're attacking the Death Star in A New Hope, and they're all calling out their numbers, what number was Biggs? You guys can just keep buzzing until you get it right, because there's only so many options. Tim.
Red 3.
You got it. All right. All right.
I knew it.
I'll continue in the same vein. What number is Porkins? But David.
Red 4.
Tim.
Red 5?
No, that's Luke.
That's Luke.
Ah, that is Luke.
David,
yeah.
you got another guess?
Red 8.
Nope, you're too high.
Red 6.
You got it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I forget. Where are we now? Did you both get one right?
Tim has 2.
Okay. Tim has 2. All right. I'll do one more number question because I have one. You're not going to know this, so never mind.
TK421.
Nope, that one's too easy. All right, I'm doing a non-number question because these have been too difficult. Okay, so, but it's related to the previous question. So, Wedge Antilles is played by Dennis Lawson. In real life, Dennis Lawson is uncle to what other Star Wars character actor? He's a very prominent character in the prequels. David.
Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan.
Correct.
Wow.
I was hoping it was going to be Anakin.
Yeah, I was going to say Hayden Christensen.
All right. I'm out of number questions. Well, I have number questions, but they're too hard. I'll think of some more. Okay, who said this line? Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader.
Oh, oh, dude. I actually don't know his name. I know I can see him, though.
It's the bald guy.
It's one of the guys sitting at the boardroom, essentially.
Yeah, I actually
of the
probably
Death
wouldn't know
Star.
this guy's name either, so I can carry on. Admiral Mati is the guy's name.
Okay.
Is that the one he force jokes?
Yeah, right?
Yes, that's in the conference room on the Death Star.
Yep.
Okay, who says the line, Jabba, you're a wonderful human being? David.
Han Solo.
Correct. In the added scene in the special edition of A New Hope. Where are we score-wise?
When he steps on his
2-2,
tail.
all tied up.
Okay.
Overtime, baby.
I gotta find a good one.
Golden goal.
Okay, I got another number question that hopefully you guys can get.
Ooh.
According to Luke, how big approximately are womp rats?
2 meters?
Yeah, you got it. Close enough.
Yeah.
All right, ding, ding, ding.
Wait, what was it?
Yeah, they're no bigger than 2 meters. Yeah,
Okay.
2 meters.
yeah, close enough.
Nice, Tim.
Well done.
There we go.
Tim, the champion of the Avengers episode and the Star Wars duo episodes.
I smack swamp rats in my backyard all the time. They're no bigger than 2 meters.
Dude, I have to admit, my most underrated Lego set for Star Wars when I was a kid was a T-61 Skyhopper, right?
Yep. T-16.
T-16, my bad.
That was going to be one of my questions, but I didn't think you guys would know it.
Yeah, dude, I just thought it was a great design, and I wish we got to see it. And the only time we see it in the movies is Luke is playing with a model of one.
I actually
as a 17-year-old with like...
I have a toy
yeah,
with
there
the
it
model.
is. That's
Look at
freaking
that.
it, man.
Wow.
I love
Someone
it.
gave me this a long time ago, and I never opened it because I didn't really care. But there it is. There's the toy T-16
Dude, Luke
Skyhopper.
looks super blonde as an action figure there. Look at that. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Sick.
My other number questions.
Let's get Jared and Joe in
let's
on
get Jared
some
and Joe on
trivia
this.
real quick.
All right. And these are all like direct quotes from A New Hope, but I also have A New Hope completely memorized by heart, so that's why I know these. So yeah, we had the cell Leia was in as 2187 because Han looks it up on the little display and he goes 2187. You go and get him. I'll hold him off. And then the other related question was, do you know what detention block Princess Leia was held in? C-3PO says that.
It's a number or a letter?
Yeah, it's both.
Zoom.
Yep.
B3.
No.
D3.
It's level 5 detention block AA23. And then the last number I had was what is the number of the trash compactor that they're in? Luke yells it out.
The detention level.
Yeah.
Shut down all the garbage below the detention level.
No, Luke actually yells it out when he's telling 3PO to open the doors after they've been saved.
Oh, okay. We're such casuals. We don't know these numbers.
I didn't realize there were so many numbers in Star Wars.
Yeah,
He says something like, "Where are we?" And he goes, 326 3827.
Oh, what the hell, Mike? Are you kidding me?
How'd you guys find my social security number?
I didn't know Star Wars was a math class. Screw that, man.
Just trying to make a theme.
Only numbers I need to know are 12 parsecs and R2D2, which is 2 numbers.
I liked how they downplayed the achievement of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love this line where
Han,
he's like, well, it is if you round down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's great.
Like Han still, brags about his ship, and it wasn't even really like the ship that did it. It was the fact that they injected expensive jet fuel into it one time. But
No spoilers for Solo, please.
Oh, sorry.
Just in case there was someone who skipped ahead. I got your back, person.
Well, it's not a spoiler that they made the Kessel Run because we know about that in the original movie.
All right, let's wrap this up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend who likes Star Wars, and keep an eye out for future episodes. You can subscribe on iTunes or follow us on SoundCloud or whatever podcast platform you use, Stitcher, Google Play. Thank you, Mike, for coming back on the show.
I'm going to go take a nap in the lap of a Wookiee.
Don't talk about
jealous.
your wife that way.
Yeah. And Tim, thanks for coming back again.
You're welcome. I shot first this time.
And thank you.
Don't talk about your wife like that.
Oh, man. Joe and Jared, thank you, as always.
No, you're welcome. I don't have a good Star Wars line.
Yeah, well, let's drink 2 and see where it goes.
Okay.
I did want to briefly mention, if you are a gamer out there, I started a Hostel gaming clan this week, so if you're interested in that, just message us on any of our social media platforms and I can get you in as a prospect in the clan. We'd be excited to have you. But that is all. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
May the Force be with you, but not really in the Han Solo movie.
So long.
Thanks for listening to Hostel Discourse. Subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And check out our other social media accounts linked in the show notes. Join us next time for more inexhaustible debate over the most questionable of topics.